A homeless teenager with nowhere left to run finds himself at a deserted beach parking lot at 2 a.m., where a terrifying encounter with an armed predator forces him to make a choice that will change his destiny forever. When 89 Hells Angels bikers arrive at dawn, their engines thundering like a storm, nobody could have imagined what these feared outlaws would offer him. But what drives a brotherhood of rebels to adopt a stranger as one of their own? The ocean wind cut through Marcus's hoodie like it wasn't even there. He sat on a concrete parking barrier at Shoreline Beach, watching waves crash against the rocks below. The parking lot was empty except for one broken streetlight that buzzed and flickered, casting weird shadows across the cracked pavement. Marcus was 17, exhausted, and had been living out of his backpack for nearly a week. He adjusted the straps on his shoulders and felt the familiar ache in his ribs where his stepfather's boot had connected 5 nights ago. The bruise there was still tender, a constant reminder of why he'd climbed out his bedroom window and never looked back. He pulled out his wallet and counted what remained of his savings: 3 20s, a 10, and some loose change, $73.47. Not much to build a new life on, but it was all he had. The sandwich he'd eaten at noon from a gas station deli was a distant memory now, his stomach cramping with hunger. A semi-truck hauled past on the coastal highway above, its jake brake echoing in the night. Marcus watched it disappear around the bend, heading north toward Oregon. He'd thought about hitching a ride earlier, but the drivers all looked at him with suspicion. A skinny kid with a black eye wasn't someone people wanted in their cab. Footsteps on gravel made him tense up. A flashlight beam swept across the parking lot, and Marcus recognized the security guard who'd chased him off earlier. "Move along, kid," the man called out, not unkindly. "Can't have you sleeping here. City ordinance." Marcus stood, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. "Just leaving," he said, his voice hoarse from not using it much lately. He walked down the beach access path, his sneakers sinking into the sand. The beach was darker here, away from what little light the parking lot provided. He could hear the ocean but barely see it, just the white foam of waves catching moonlight as they rolled in. That's when he saw the glow of a phone screen near the lifeguard tower. Someone else was out here in the dark. Marcus almost turned around. The last thing he needed was trouble. But something made him look closer. The person with the phone was small, hunched over, and the way they kept looking around reminded him of a scared animal checking for predators. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Marcus could make out more details. A girl, maybe his age or younger, wearing a denim jacket covered in patches. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she kept wiping at her face like she'd been crying. Marcus knew he should walk away. His problems were big enough without taking on someone else's, but then he heard her voice, small and frightened, talking into her phone. "Please pick up, Dad, please. I don't know what to do. He found me again." She ended the call and immediately started another one, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. That's when Marcus noticed the second figure. A man stood about 30 feet behind her, partially hidden by the lifeguard tower's shadow. He was watching her, and even from this distance, Marcus could tell there was something wrong about the way he moved. Too deliberate, too focused, like a cat stalking a mouse. The man's hand went to his jacket pocket, and when it came out, Marcus saw the gleam of metal. A knife, long and curved, catching the moonlight. Marcus's feet moved before his brain could catch up. "Hey!" he shouted, running across the sand. The girl spun around, her phone tumbling from her hands. The man with the knife turned too, surprised by the interruption. Up close, he was older than Marcus had thought, maybe 40, with a thin face and eyes that looked wrong, empty. "Walk away, kid," the man said, his voice flat and cold. "This doesn't concern you." Marcus positioned himself between the man and the girl, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. "Leave her alone." The man smiled, showing yellowed teeth. "Or what, you gonna stop me?" He moved the knife in slow circles, light dancing along its edge. "I've got business with her. Her daddy owes me money, lots of it." Behind Marcus, the girl had backed up against the lifeguard tower. He could hear her ragged breathing, feel her fear like a physical thing in the air between them. "Call the cops," Marcus said over his shoulder, not taking his eyes off the knife. "My phone," she whispered. "I dropped it." The man laughed. "No cops coming, boy. No one coming at all. It's just us in the ocean." He took a step forward. "Now move, or I'll cut you first." Marcus thought about his stepfather's fists, about all the times he'd curled up and taken the beating, because fighting back only made it worse. He thought about his little brother Jason, still trapped in that house, still enduring what Marcus had escaped. He thought about running, but his feet stayed planted in the sand. "I said move!" The man lunged forward, knife aimed at Marcus's chest. Marcus grabbed the only thing within reach, a piece of driftwood half buried in the sand. He yanked it free and swung hard, more instinct than skill. The wood connected with the man's wrist, and the knife went flying, disappearing into the darkness. The man cursed and charged at Marcus, tackling him to the ground. They hit the sand hard, Marcus's backpack jamming into his spine. Fists rained down on him, and he tasted blood in his mouth. But then the girl was there, screaming and kicking sand in the man's face. He reared back, clawing at his eyes, and Marcus used the moment to roll away. "Run!" Marcus yelled, grabbing the girl's hand. They ran toward the parking lot, feet pounding on sand that seemed to grab at their ankles. Behind them, the man was shouting threats, his footsteps getting closer. Marcus's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. They reached the concrete path and sprinted up toward the parking lot. The security guard's golf cart was parked near the entrance, and Marcus had never been so happy to see another person in his life. "Help!" the girl screamed. "He's got a knife!" The security guard, a heavy-set man in his 50s, immediately pulled out his radio. "This is Tom at Shoreline. Need police and backup. Armed assailant on the beach. 2 juveniles in danger." The man with the knife had reached the bottom of the path. He looked at the guard, at his radio, at the lights of an approaching car on the highway. Then he turned and ran back down the beach, vanishing into the darkness like he'd never been there at all. The next 2 hours were a chaos of flashing lights and questions. Police cars filled the parking lot, their radios crackling with static and codes Marcus didn't understand. An ambulance arrived, even though neither he nor the girl were seriously hurt. A paramedic cleaned the cut on Marcus's lip and checked his ribs, prodding at the old bruises with gentle fingers. "These are a few days old," the paramedic said quietly. "You want to tell me how you got them?" Marcus shook his head. "Fell down some stairs." The paramedic looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. Instead, he handed Marcus an ice pack and moved on to check the girl. A police officer with kind eyes and gray at his temples sat down next to Marcus on the back of the ambulance. "That was a brave thing you did, son. Stupid, but brave." He flipped open his notebook. "I need to get some information from you. Name?" "Marcus Chen." "Age?" 17. "Address?" Marcus hesitated. "I don't really have one right now." The officer's expression shifted, understanding dawning. "You're on your own out here?" "Just passing through," Marcus said, the lie feeling heavy on his tongue. "Heading north to stay with my cousin in Portland." Before the officer could ask more questions, the girl appeared. She'd been wrapped in a blanket by one of the paramedics, but she'd thrown it off and was walking straight toward Marcus with purpose in her stride. "You saved my life," she said simply. Her eyes were still red from crying, but her voice was steady now. "That man, he's been stalking me for weeks. He used to work for my dad before they had a falling out. I think he was going to hurt me to get back at him." Marcus tried to shrug it off. "Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have run the other way." She held out her hand. "I'm Natalie Corso." Marcus shook her hand, confused by her formal introduction. "Marcus." "I know my dad's going to want to thank you properly," Natalie said. She pulled out a phone, not hers, borrowed from one of the officers. "I finally got through to him. He's on his way with some of his guys." Something about the way she said "his guys" made Marcus's stomach tighten. "Your dad?" Natalie nodded. "Vincent Corso. People call him Hammer. He's the president of the Hells Angels chapter that runs the coast from here to Eureka." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He'd heard about the Hells Angels. Everyone had. They were the motorcycle gang that ran half the underground business in California, feared and respected in equal measure. Great, Marcus thought. I just saved a biker princess. "Look," he said quickly, "I'm glad you're okay, but I should probably get going before—" The sound cut him off. It started low, like thunder in the distance, but grew louder. The deep, rhythmic roar of motorcycle engines, many of them, getting closer. The police officers in the parking lot all looked up, hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. The security guard backed up toward his golf cart. Then they appeared around the bend in the highway, a river of headlights and chrome. Motorcycles, dozens of them, riding 2 by 2 in perfect formation. They filled the highway, engines so loud Marcus could feel the vibration in his bones. The bikes pulled into the parking lot like a military convoy, precise and intimidating. There had to be 80, maybe 90 motorcycles, each carrying a rider in a leather vest covered in patches. Hell's Angels, just like Natalie had said. They parked in rows facing the ambulance, and when the engines cut off simultaneously, the sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but watch as the bikers dismounted. They were all sizes and ages, from young guys with fresh tattoos to grizzled veterans with gray beards and scars that told stories. But they all moved with the same confidence, the same dangerous grace. From the center of the pack, a man stepped forward who could only be Hammer. He was shorter than Marcus expected, maybe 5'10", but built like his nickname suggested, all muscle and coiled power. His bald head gleamed in the parking lot lights, and his vest was covered in more patches than anyone else's. His arms were sleeved with elaborate tattoos, and 3 rings glinted on each hand. "Natalie," he said, and his voice cracked with emotion. "Baby girl, are you okay?" Natalie ran to him, and this dangerous man who commanded a small army of bikers wrapped his arms around his daughter and held her like she was made of glass. "I'm fine, Dad," she said into his shoulder. "Because of him," she pointed at Marcus. Every eye in the parking lot turned to Marcus. He wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground, to be anywhere but under the scrutiny of 90 Hell's Angels bikers. Hammer gently released his daughter and walked toward Marcus, his boots heavy on the pavement. The police officers shifted nervously but didn't intervene. Up close, Marcus could see the man's eyes were the same blue as Natalie's, but where hers were soft, his were hard as diamonds. "You the kid who saved my daughter?" Hammer asked. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "What's your name?" "Marcus Chen, sir." Hammer looked him up and down, taking in the backpack, the worn clothes, the healing bruises, the split lip from tonight's fight. "Where are you from, Marcus?" "San Diego. Long way from home. Where are you staying?" Marcus's mouth went dry. Around. Hammer's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. "You got family up here?" "I told the cops I have a cousin in Portland," Marcus said quietly. "But that was a lie. I don't have anybody." The honesty surprised him as much as it seemed to surprise Hammer. But something about this man, this dangerous, powerful man, made lying feel impossible. Hammer nodded slowly. Then he turned to his daughter. "Tell me exactly what happened." Natalie recounted the attack, her voice getting stronger as she went. She told him about the man with the knife, about how Marcus had stepped between them, about the fight on the beach. As she talked, the bikers around them began to murmur, their expressions shifting from curiosity to respect. When she finished, Hammer turned back to Marcus. "You put yourself between my daughter and a blade. You didn't know her, didn't know me. You had no reason to risk your life. Why'd you do it?" Marcus thought about his little brother, about his mom before she died, about all the times someone should have stepped in but didn't, because it was the right thing to do. For the first time, Hammer smiled. It transformed his face, making him look younger, almost kind. "Tommy," he called over his shoulder. A biker with a red beard and kind eyes stepped forward. "Yeah, boss?" "Get the collection." Tommy nodded and moved through the crowd of bikers. Marcus watched in confusion as each man pulled out their wallet and contributed money to a growing pile in Tommy's hands. 20s, 50s, even a few hundreds. When Tommy returned, he pressed the thick wad of cash into Marcus's hand. "From the Brotherhood," he said. "Consider it a thank you." Marcus stared at the money. There had to be thousands of dollars here. "I can't." "You can and you will," Hammer interrupted. "A debt is a debt, and the Hell's Angels always pay their debts." He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, and Marcus tried not to wince at the pressure on his bruised ribs. "But that's not all I'm offering." Marcus looked up, confused. "My brother-in-law runs a boat repair shop down at the marina," Hammer continued. "Good business, honest work. He's been looking for an apprentice, someone young and willing to learn. Job comes with a room above the shop, meals, and a steady paycheck." paused, studying Marcus's face. "You interested?" Marcus couldn't speak. His throat had closed up, emotion threatening to spill over. A job, a room, a chance. "Why?" he finally managed. "You don't even know me." Hammer's grip on his shoulder tightened, not painfully, but firmly. "I know enough. I know you're running from something bad enough to leave everything behind. I know you're brave enough to face down a man with a knife for a stranger. I know you're honest enough to tell me the truth when a lie would be easier." He smiled again. "That's all I need to know." Natalie appeared at her father's side. "Stay," she said to Marcus. "My Uncle Ray is great. He taught me everything I know about engines." Marcus looked at the money in his hand, at the bikers surrounding him with respect in their eyes, at Natalie, who was alive because of a choice he'd made without thinking. He thought about his brother back in San Diego, about the promise he'd made to himself to get settled somewhere safe and send for Jason. "I don't know anything about boats," Marcus admitted. A biker with gray hair and glasses laughed. "That's why it's called learning, kid. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to rebuild a carburetor." "What do you say, Marcus?" Hammer asked. "You want a fresh start?" The sun was beginning to rise over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The parking lot that had seemed so threatening in the darkness now looked almost peaceful, filled with bikes and men who were offering him something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope. "Yes," Marcus said, his voice stronger now. "Yes, I want that." A cheer went up from the bikers, deep voices mixing with the sound of the surf below. They came forward one by one, shaking Marcus's hand, patting his back, welcoming him into something he didn't fully understand yet but could feel the weight of. Family. "First things first," Hammer said when the noise died down. "Let's get you some breakfast. There's a place called Molly's that opens early for the fishermen. Best biscuits and gravy on the coast." They took him to the diner, a weathered building that smelled like coffee and bacon and home. Marcus ate until he thought he'd burst. Eggs scrambled with cheese, hash browns crispy at the edges, biscuits smothered in sausage gravy, and a stack of pancakes that hung over the edge of his plate. The bikers filled the restaurant, their leather and denim out of place among the fishermen and dock workers, but the waitresses greeted them by name and kept the coffee coming. Marcus sat between Hammer and Natalie, listening to stories and laughter, feeling the tension of the past week slowly drain from his body. After breakfast, they rode to the marina. Marcus sat behind Hammer on his bike, a massive Harley with chrome that gleamed in the morning sun. They rumbled through town, and people stopped to watch them pass, this procession of rebels and outlaws with a skinny kid in a hoodie riding among them. The marina smelled of salt water and diesel fuel. Boats bobbed in their slips, rigging clanging against masts in the breeze. Ray's Boat Repair sat at the end of the dock, a large warehouse with doors open to reveal boats in various states of disrepair. Ray turned out to be Hammer's exact opposite, tall and thin with a ready smile and permanently grease-stained hands. "So you're the kid who saved Nat," he said, looking Marcus up and down. "She's my favorite niece. You got strong hands?" Marcus held up his hands, calloused from years of doing chores his stepfather demanded. "I'm a hard worker." Ray nodded, satisfied. "That'll do. Come on, I'll show you your room." The apartment above the shop was small but clean, with large windows overlooking the marina. It had a bed, a desk, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom that was all Marcus's. After a week of sleeping in doorways and bus stops, it looked like a palace. "It's not fancy," Ray said apologetically, "but it's warm and dry and the lock on the door works." "It's perfect," Marcus said, and meant it. Ray handed him a key. "You start Monday. That gives you the weekend to settle in, get some supplies." Hammer left his number on the counter. "Anything you need, you call." After Ray left, Marcus set his backpack down and sat on the edge of the bed. Through the window, he could see the ocean stretching to the horizon, endless and blue and full of possibility. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. It rang 4 times before a young voice answered. "Hello?" "Jason," Marcus said, his voice thick. "It's me. Don't say my name. Just listen. I'm okay. I found a place, good people. I'm going to work hard and save money, and as soon as I can, I'm going to send you a bus ticket. Can you hang on a little longer?" There was a pause, then a whispered, "Yeah. Be careful, Marcus." "You too, little brother." I love you." He ended the call and stood at the window, watching boats come and go from the harbor. Gulls circled overhead, their cries mixing with the sound of waves and distant engines. His lip still hurt where it had been split. His ribs still ached from old bruises and new impacts. But for the first time since his mother died, Marcus felt something he'd almost forgotten. Safe. Sometimes, he thought, family isn't about blood. Sometimes it's about the people who show up when you need them most. Sometimes it takes one act of courage to change the entire trajectory of your life. Below, in the marina, someone started an engine. The sound echoed across the water, full of promise and possibility. Marcus smiled and got to work unpacking his backpack, ready to build a life he'd thought was impossible just 24 hours ago. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the room, warming his future. He was home.